Hi, I'm Tim Barton, president of WallBuilders. On today's show, we're going to honor the men and women who have served in the United States Armed Forces, our veterans. There's three primary stories that'll shape our show today. The first is of a veteran who's now a congressman who actually was attacked on a baseball field by a terrorist. The second story is of a lieutenant colonel who actually led to the capture of one of the most infamous terrorists of our era, Saddam Hussein. And lastly, we'll hear from a combat veteran who actually started an organization that has unparalleled success rates when it comes to helping veterans today. The story of these heroic men and their faith in God is America's hidden history.
Chad Robichaux is a Marine Corps veteran. Special Forces, 8 tours in the War on Terror. He is an amazing warrior, but he came home a broken man. The journey of how he was restored is an amazing story. I got to sit down with Chad. Here's what he had to say. We're with Chad Robichaux. Chad was a Marine, been deployed 8 times to Afghanistan, MMA fighter, mixed martial arts stuff. He is also jiu-jitsu and actually runs a fantastic organization now for vets called Mighty Oaks Warriors Program. Chad, thanks, man. Good to see you again. I always love being with you.
Yeah, same here. Thanks for having me on.
I want to take you back to kind of the beginning. Take you back to your Marine days. Why did you get in the Marine Corps and when?
Well, the Marine Corps is real special to me. My family is 3 generations of Marines. So my father was a Marine, myself, and then my son Hunter. My father was a Vietnam veteran. He came home and I watched him struggle. And growing up in that kind of home, there's a lot of alcohol, physical abuse. So that was kind of my childhood. And when I was 14 and 15 years old, my brother and I were really close growing up in a home like that. And my brother was shot and killed. And the little bit I had of a family kind of fell apart. I decided that's what I was going to do. My brother and I would always talk about joining the military for a second chance at life. And when we lost him, I decided I was going to pursue that, go into the military and really have a clean slate to begin my life. And so when I was 17 years old in 1993, I enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. And part of my dream wasn't just to be a Marine. I wanted to do some type of special operations because I love the water, I love to swim. And so I tried out to be a reconnaissance Marine and made it.
Explain what a recon Marine is, because that's a different level from normal guys.
Yeah, Marine reconnaissance is the eyes and ears of the Marine Corps. And also as a Force Recon Marine, even for the bigger picture of the whole effort in a combat theater, going out and being the eyes and ears to see what's happening on the battlefield, conduct forward operations for the Marine Corps.
You kind of operate in many ways outside the box.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're out with the other side, you dress like the other side, and so it's when you get out fighting, you just don't even look the same or act. I mean, you're thinking outside the box, so it's a whole different level.
Even though it was hard work to get there, doing that job has probably been one of the greatest blessings of my life. My first 4 years in the Marine Corps, I did active duty, and my wife and I got married. We started our family at a very young age, 18 to 19 years old. We got married, and so we've been married 23 years now.
Wow,
and,
congrats, that's great.
Yeah, so it's been a long journey, but that first 4 years, I was at 3rd Force Recon Company in Mobile, Alabama as a reservist, and I was going to college and ordered about to go back in the Marine Corps as an officer. And when 9/11 happened, I think every military person at that time, especially my command, being a Force Recon Marine, even in the reserves, I knew my life was going to be different. And I think everyone was, the attitude of the military wasn't like, oh my gosh, are we going to war? People were showing up at their commands like, hey, what's up, sir? Like, when we going to make this right? And the military was motivated at that time, and everyone wanted to deploy.
You've got a great book out, An Unfair Advantage, and in that, I remember even talking to you about it. I mean, you show up in Afghanistan, and obviously opposition there, the Taliban, everything else. Your kind of introduction to how different that culture was kind of revolved around a Russian swimming pool, as I recall.
Yeah.
I mean, tell that story.
Yeah, one of the guys who I worked with, and like I said, I didn't live on a base. I lived out in town. I lived in different Afghan families' homes and became close to these people. I ate dinner with their families, I played soccer with their kids, and I didn't understand. I think most military guys, when they would have went to Afghanistan, even in the special operations community, wouldn't have understood the cultural dynamics of Afghanistan, but to learn who the Afghans were and who the Taliban was, what the Taliban had done to these people, and how oppressed these people were, and what happened to women and children, and just the evil in the culture. But there was this guy I worked with named Bashir. Bashir, it really took me around one day and introduced me to why they feared the Taliban, what had happened. We went to a place we called the Killing Pool. There's an Olympic-sized pool just north of the city of Kabul, and the pool's empty now. And we went up there, and Bashir showed me, what took place there, and how the Taliban would take people there and do mass executions, where they would line people up in both the deep end and the shallow end of the pool. Morbidly, it would seem like the kids were in the shallow end because the bullet holes were lower, but the whole perfect line just riddled with bullet holes in the sidewall of that pool, where they would just execute people. They had the high dive, the 3-tier high dive, and they would throw people off the top right into the bottom of the pool, just like garbage, and to kill them. And even on the middle, when they had a metal steel cable noose, they'd hang people off of. And it changed my heart and my mind, because when I went there, I'd say I'm young. I was actually an older man. I'd already been around the military for a while. I was close to 30 years old going there, so I had some life maturity. But I went there as this is bravado, we're gonna go and retaliate for 9/11. That was my mindset going there. But when I discovered who the Taliban was and what the Afghan people endured, my heart broke for those people, and I had this kind of a more worldview of really helping the people that couldn't help themselves. But also there was something else that took place that I think that allowed that to really infect me, and that hatred to really kind of overtake me, and all this stuff that I've seen and participated in, it just filled my heart with hate and rage and anger and bitterness, and I wasn't spiritually strong.
You come back after all that point in time, it's got to have had an effect on you, on Kathy, on everything you do. I mean, you got to come back a different guy than what you went, right?
I'm always ashamed to say, but it's just the truth. Like my wife and children, they were scared of me, and I'd throw temper tantrums like a 15-year-old child when I didn't get my way. I'd punch things and break things and yell at them, and I was just out of control. And that was my home, and it was much easier to be in Afghanistan than it was to be at home. And eventually, those anger and those symptoms turned into these physiological symptoms. My arms would go numb. I feel like my cheeks would go numb. I feel like my throat was swelling shut sometimes. And there were times I felt like I had 1,000 pounds on my chest. I couldn't breathe. And I didn't want to say anything to the guys I worked with. I was in this real small special operations unit. And I figured if I said anything to them, they would think I was weak and I wouldn't be able to do my job anymore. So I just kept it to myself, tried to push it down and do my job. And it worked for a little while, but the symptoms only got worse. And I started having these moments where I almost felt like an outer body kind of experience. And then I started forgetting things, like almost losing memory. And there was a period of about 2 weeks where I kind of came to this moment of clarity and realized for the last 2 weeks I really was almost like blacked out. Like I couldn't really, it was just real foggy. And I knew I had to say something because of what I was doing at that time and who I was with. I didn't only put myself in danger, but I put other people in danger. And so I spoke up and said something, and I was brought home. And Kathy and I sat before a psychologist, and they diagnosed me with PTSD.
Well, I mean, you've been a tough guy all the way through. I mean, from MMA. I mean, how did MMA get mixed into this? Because even that, you're still a great fighter at that point in time.
Yeah. Well, I was fighting on the side.
So while you're active duty, fighting on the side.
Yeah. I started when I was 5 years old. I always say I started when I was little, but I'm still little. But I started when I was 5 years old, so I've been doing martial arts my whole life. But at that time, I was already fighting professionally in MMA on the side. I was already doing jiu-jitsu. And so when I sat before my wife and my counselor and trying to figure out something to do to get me out of this funk, they recommended I get on those mats and wrestle and do jiu-jitsu and train. And I tell you, when I did, I didn't want to at first, but when I did, I felt like I found the cure. But you could have a cure for being, like a medicine for being sick, and you could abuse it. And like some people would climb in a bottle of alcohol or take pills, like that's what I did with jiu-jitsu and MMA. I just dove into it and I hid there. I never got better. I didn't fix anything. I was still having panic attacks at night. I was still angry at home. My family was still falling apart. But on the outside, it looked like everything was fine because...
Well, you're winning world championships and everything else. I mean, you're all over TV and pay-per-view and everything else. So, I mean, you're winning stuff.
Like I had it together, exactly. Being an athlete on television, in the gym, it didn't take long for me to walk out of a marriage and with other women around, and I would have inappropriate relationships with other women, talking to women, and I ended up in an affair, and didn't really even care how it would affect my family. I was just really cold at that point. We sat our family down and told our family we were gonna get divorced, and that everything was gonna be better, which is a lie. I hear that excuse all the time. It wasn't gonna be better. Our kids were devastated. And my wife and I really had two different reactions. I went into this apartment and I took a big fight on Strikeforce on Showtime, and started preparing for this fight. Everyone's around me and lifting me up, and I was kind of focused on that. And my wife went into a church, and she started praying for me. And she said she would just ask God, God, let me see Chad the way you see Chad. And let me love Chad the way you love Chad. And let me forgive Chad the way you forgave Chad. Meanwhile, I'm focused on this fight. I win this giant fight in front of 10,000 people in the Toyota Center in Houston, Texas. And as soon as that fight was over, I felt like, the whole rug of life was pulled out from under me. I felt alone, and I really felt like I had to face the damage I'd done to my wife and the kids. And I had decided, that there was no more future for me. There was no more purpose moving forward. I had caused enough damage. My family would be sad, but they'd be better off, and I decided I was gonna take my life. And I would sit in my closet, and I had put my family's pictures on the ground, and I had my pistol. I had a Glock 22, and I would sit there with the pistol, and I'd put it against my head. I'd put it to my mouth, and I'd try to decide how I was gonna do it. And the one thing that kept me from doing it is that I knew at that time the only people that were coming to see me was my kids. My son had a key to my apartment, my son Hunter, and I didn't want them to find me that way. And so I started thinking, well, how can I make it look like an accident? But I'd still go to that closet for a period of about 2 weeks with it, and sit over those pictures, and just cry. I was just so frustrated. And then my wife, unwittingly, saved my life. She knocked on my door, and she met me at the door, and we had this argument, really because I was just being a jerk. And she asked me a question that radically changed my life. It's why we're sitting here today. And she asked me how I could do everything I did in the Marine Corps. She saw me become a recon Marine. She saw me train for these deployments. And then she saw the MMA, like when I prepare for MMA fights, like I cut like 30 pounds of weight. She's like, how could you do all of that? And when it comes to your family, you'll quit. And
Wow.
To me, there's no more soul-cutting word to be called a quitter. And she was right. I'd been successful at professional things in my life. When it came to the most important things, being a husband, being a father, being that young 17-year-old kid that raised his hand and had a second chance at life, like to do something important with his life, including my own health. I quit on all those things. And in that moment, I made a decision that I was going to turn it around. I didn't know how. And so I asked my wife if there was someone at this church she was going to that could help me with this decision. And she introduced me to a man named Steve Toth, who you know. And I had written a 5-paragraph operational order, military style, of how I was going to fix my life. And I met this guy at Starbucks, and I slid it across from him, and said I was so proud of myself, like how I was going to do everything right. And he didn't even read it. He put his hand on it and slid it back over to me, and he said, "You're gonna fail. You end up right back where you are right now." And and he tapped on that paper. He said, "If this doesn't have anything to do with your relationship with God, I'm not going to waste your time, and I'm not going to let you waste mine." And so I trusted this man, Steve, and I surrendered my life to Christ. And beyond that decision, Steve mentored me for an entire year in biblical manhood. It was huge. And what I realized through that process was, yes, some bad things happened to me in my childhood, in Afghanistan, through my life. Some bad things happened to me. But those things that happened to me, those things didn't lead me to being in that closet with that pistol in my hand. As cliche as it may sound, like to me, it was like a light bulb moment in my life to realize that my past didn't have to define my future, that I could choose something different moving forward. And I did. That choice I felt very clear that I had to make moving forward, and also felt a burden from God to do, was to take what Steve, the challenge that God gave me, the second chance that God gave me, and the mentorship and discipleship that Steve gave me, and I had to pay it forward. And so my wife and I, we decided, hey, we're gonna leave everything that makes sense. The gym was extremely successful, our martial arts gym, kind of the height of my MMA career. We're gonna walk away from that, and we're gonna start helping other guys just like us, helping other families just like ours. And then we started Mighty Oaks Foundation.
So, what do you do at Mighty Oaks? What goes on? What's part of the program?
Yeah, well, it's peer-to-peer, so it's not clinical. And so we run 30 one-week camps a year. And those 1 week it doesn't stop at 1 week. That's just the intensive that we first get our hands on them and get them to the point to where they make a decision to accept responsibility and move forward. And despite, what has happened to them, just like I had to do. And once they make the decision, we're able to take them through the same mentorship that Steve did for me and help them come to the simple realization that they were created. They were created by design and have a plan and purpose for their life. And if they could align their life to that model that which we were created to live, the hardships of the past will be there. They'll still remember what happened, but they'll be able to make choices moving forward that will lead them in a good place. Understand that being a man of God does not only not mean you're weak, but it also means you're strong. And you're going to be able to be strong in the face of any adversity you face in life. You know, God does have a promise for us in Jeremiah 29:11. You know, plans to prosper us and not to harm us, plans to give us a hope in the future. That promise doesn't exempt us of the hardships of life. It just means when we face those hardships of life, we have to be able to understand that plan and understand that promise and hold true to it, and endure through and trust that promise that He has for us. And you know, to be able to tell that to these young kids on the front end and see them grab a hold of it, it gives me a lot of peace to know that they won't have to figure it out when they're sitting in their closet with their pistol in their hand.
Yeah.
They can figure it out in the front end.
We've seen groups like 22 Kill, you know, trying to emphasize the number of veterans who are killed. And we've seen in Vietnam, like there were 58,000 guys killed by the enemy. But since then, there's been 3 times as many killed by their own hand.
Yeah.
And so, and we're even seeing, we saw recent reports where the suicide rate inside active duty military is now 4-fold over what it had been.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a genuine, real problem.
Yeah. The Marine Corps does such a great job at preparing these kids mentally, and they're mentally tough, they're motivated. Physically, they're physically tough, but what does spiritual even mean? And so I'm able to go in the front end and say, hey, this is what spiritual strength looks like. And if you could be the man you were created to be in the beginning, if you can understand what spiritual resilience means, yeah, you may face some hard things in Iraq and Afghanistan. You will see some things that you wasn't ever created or intended to see, because that's what we have to do as Marines. But when you do, you're going to be able to bounce back because you understand what it means to be spiritually strong. It's a pretty simple methodology. You live by design, but essentially that's where we have found success. And we've had 2,044 graduates of this intensive program. Those are about half veterans and half active duty that the military sends to us on official military orders. And of those 2,044 graduates, we've had 0 suicides.
You've had 0 suicides of all those thousands of vets. And you were telling me a few months ago about one of the military bases that for combat deployed guys who come back home, the divorce rate is over 90%. And divorce rate through your program is under 1%. I mean, the national average for not combat, just national average, you're looking at 30 to 40%, and you're under 1%. So now you've got these programs going that transform marriages, that save lives physically, save families. So, you know, we got lots of vets, 43 million who served in the history of the United States, put on the uniform at some point, a lot listening to us. What do you tell vets? I mean, this is Veterans Day. Message to vets.
Well, I mean, you know, as veterans, I know it's not Memorial Day, but you know, when we look at what those who went before us and those who stood side by side with us, the price they paid. You know, for those of us who are still here, the veterans on Veterans Day that are still here, you know, we should be able to be living out what our brothers died for, what the freedom that we fought for, to actually honor that and embrace that from living it out. And living it out, to me, as a veteran means either I'm living my life to the fullest and producing in my home, in my community, in my culture, in this nation, in the world, producing for me as a Christian to the kingdom. That's what Veterans Day means to me, taking the freedoms that we do have, being in the small percentage of the world that has religious freedom, and being able to produce and honor those who paid that price for me to be able to do that. And then with that comes the ability to serve and encourage other veterans to do the same.
Yeah, and you know, I just highly encourage any vet they ought to go through the program you got. It's transformational, even if you're squared away or think you're squared away.
It can feel pretty hopeless to hear about the problem, but I think people need to understand there's also a solution. And you know, that's one of the things we focus on at Mighty Oaks, is not just talking about the problem, not just talking about the suicides, not just talking about divorces, but talking about the solution. And we truly believe and believe we have evidence to show that the solution is Christ, and introducing these guys to the lives they were created to live.
Anybody that wants to help you or be part of the program, where do they go? What do they do?
Well, you go to mightyoaksprograms.org. That's the website. You can apply. We make the application very simple. Someone gets back to you right away. A person actually gets back to you right away. And we have 30 one-week programs per year. And by the way, I know you know this, all of our programs are absolutely free, including airfare. We pay for, we take all the obstacles out. So any veteran around the country, or even we bring people from out of the country that are veterans living somewhere else, if they want to come to the program, we cover all the costs. And we're able to do that from the support of a grateful nation who believes in what we do and has locked arms with us and donates to us.
Yeah. Thanks, bro. Thanks for what you've done. Thanks for getting your feet square, getting your family straight, and helping so many others. Bless you, man.
Absolutely. God bless.